Annette V, she has this wonderful book from 2017, and she talks about medieval France as a literate society. Like if you wanted to buy land in medieval France, if you wanted to get married, if you wanted to, pay your taxes, you had to have some sort of written document. Mm-hmm. Okay, so like the society was dependent on reading and writing documents, but the portion of literate people in that society was very low. So you had a literate society that was dependent on literacy and a population that is largely illiterate. And what she sort of says there is like, then you can see how literacy is connected to power in that society. And so I think that reflection on modern day society is really interesting. Because if you think about it's hard to sort of dispute that computation is a literacy of power in society right now, right? Like everything we do in some ways depends on software that somebody wrote. But the proportion of the population that is like computational literate is like super small. Like that analogy is really interesting. It has limitations. Like it's not a perfect analogy, but I think, those are the kinds of things that you start to wonder about when you think of computation as literacy.
Yeah, my mind is spinning right now. Like the idea of thinking of what would different genres be of computational literacy, like that has really got me thinking. But even what you're just talking about, like, yeah, there is a lot of power if you are literate and are able to use this form of literacy in society. And what is I find kind of fascinating is that there are people in power, like Congress, who are not literate in this, and they are in a position of power, but they don't have this kind of power. So it's fascinating seeing them in the TikTok ban discussions. Yeah, and they have no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, does TikTok connect to Wi-Fi? Yeah. Yes. Like, I don't understand. So the other really cool thing that Annette B does, this book really changed my thinking in so many ways, is she's like, the problem is, like, if I say I am computationally literate, like, do you think of yourself as computationally literate?
Yeah, it depends on how you think of computational literacy. But yeah, I mean, like, there's the using the tools like computers, there's a continuum of it. There's also being able to program it. Like I can go from like one end to the other and back and forth, etc. So in different ways, I am literate.
So like if you had to write a Python script to pull down some data, like metadata on like, say, I don't know, whatever you're interested in, like you could probably figure out how to do that.
Yeah, like I haven't used Python, but because I have used like C++, Swift, Java, JavaScript, etc., like I can transfer the syntax over and go, okay, I can figure this out.
This is what I would need to do. Yeah. One of my problems with computational literacy is that it's also very imprecise in the same way that computational thinking is. And like that kind of bugs me. But one of the things that Annette V did that she's like, basically, when we start calling ourselves computationally literate, we have just inadvertently called a whole bunch of people computationally illiterate. And to call someone illiterate attaches stigma to that person. And so there's like a moral, like, so once education system, like here's where the danger comes in. It's like an education system says, okay, we're gonna call everything computational literacy. Well, then it's sort of like you start to attach these moral value judgments to people who don't have that like literacy. Like to call somebody illiterate is a moral judgment on them in many ways, even if we don't intend it that way. Like I think so then you start to think about, well, hey, like we're talking about literacy. Like you have to remember that like as much as literacy has been like a tool of empowerment for people, it has been a tool of oppression in exactly as much, so like who gets to decide what counts as literacy? Yep. Who gets access to the literacy? Who gets denied? Whose forms of literacy are repressed or marginalized? Literacy can be a tool of disenfranchisement. So it's like in the research we're doing, we're thinking about a lot of those like kind of those tensions. I think are really everywhere once you start to think about it.
This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast was from episode 189, which is titled "Computational Literacies" with Michael Horn. You can listen to this episode as well as hundreds more by simply searching for the CSK8 podcast on your favorite podcast app.